"Are you Arthur Keith?" I said, "Yes." "I listen to your podcast, but some mornings I'm in a really bad mood. And you come with this positive stuff, and I read it, and I think, fuck you, Arthur. Fuck you, Arthur. I'm having a bad day. I don't need it." I needed to hear that because it talks to the point that there are people out there who are going through stuff.
Welcome to the What Do You Stand For podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the What Do You Stand For podcast, the place where emerging leaders in hospitality come to be informed, inspired, and transformed. Today, we are here with two members of the crew. We have Colin and Jerry.
Hello, hello.
Good afternoon, Arthur. How are you all doing on this fine day?
Awesome. But let me tell you something. I got to kick this podcast off with a story. A few weeks ago, I ran into a listener, which was really cool. So Lorna and I were sitting at the bar eating, and at the other end, there was a couple, and she looks at me and she says, "Are you Arthur Keith?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you recognize me? We live in the same community." I'm like, "Okay." She says, "I listen to your podcast. I get your tweets." And she said, "It's inspiration." She said, "But some mornings I'm in a really bad mood. And you come with this positive stuff, and I read it, and I think, fuck you, Arthur. Fuck you, Arthur. I'm having a bad day. I don't need it." So I'm sitting there in this bar, and I'm like, man, that was rough. You know, how often does someone say to you, "Fuck you, Arthur," right? And that's exactly how she said it. But she said, those are the days that are tough days for me. And she said, I find myself later on in the day coming back around to it, and I find myself sharing that message with my team.
Awesome.
Yeah. And for me, once I got over the shock of being told, "Fuck you," I stepped back and said, I think this is a message that I'm meant to hear and that needs to be shared. And really what resonated with me was, you know, because we tend to come at it, what do you stand for, from a very positive point of view, right?
Right.
How do we lift people up? How do we inspire people? But what if you're having one of those days where you're just not okay and it's hard for you to hear that message?
Man, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I really love that we're doing this one because right now I think it's a time where people need it.
Yeah.
You know, and anytime really, it's just everyone has ups and downs. And, you know, especially with what's going on in our economy right now and with hotels shut down and just now vamping back up. Sometimes it's really hard to wake up every day and feel like, you know, you're good, you're okay.
Yeah. And for me, it was a real big reminder, like, you know, hey, dude, man, some people may not respond to your message the way you want them to, and you need to be sensitive to that. And it was reminding me as a leader that, you know, we have people within our teams or within our organizations that are going through stuff. We may not get the response that we were hoping for or believe we were going to get based on where they're at that day. So I don't know if any of you have seen that or have people in your life that are dealing with stuff, and you've had times where you've had a similar scenario or a similar reaction.
I know I have. I'm sure we all have. I've had a young lady that just really did a wrong thing in front of the client. And I pulled her in my office and she said, "Hey, Jerry, you know what? I'm just having a really rough day. It's just a really rough day." And so I said to her, "Listen, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to act that way in front of your customer. You need to find an exit and get out."
Yep.
There you go.
And take action on yourself instead of taking a reaction out on somebody else. What are your thoughts, Colin? I'm sure you've experienced this too.
Yeah, I love what you just said, right? So it's okay to not be okay because not everybody lives that world. I totally believe that as a leader, you have to be okay more of the time than not because you are leading people through this, but it's not reality, right? There's certain things that happen to you, but it's not okay not to be okay in front of your clients. Right. And I agree with that. You have to walk away. Like, that's how I look at it. Right. And maybe it's something I didn't do nearly as well as a young leader as I now can do, but you have to take a minute, right? Even today, completely overwhelmed, had lots of things going on. Not that I wasn't okay, but overwhelmed, had just lots of things going on. And I took advantage of working from home and took the dog for a walk, right? Only to clear my mind, right? Only to let it just go away so that I can come back and then I can focus. And the same thing goes when you're not there mentally, right? When you're not feeling it, you're not feeling like you can do your very best. You owe it to yourself and you owe it to your team members to take a moment and see if you can find it, right? Because that's what we are getting paid for. So if you're working, you're getting paid for that. That's the whole idea. But it's okay to get to that point. You just need to figure out how you can resolve it.
So let me just say this about the story that you told, Arthur. What I liked about that story was that identified that she had the FU moments.
Yeah.
I love that she came back to it at the end of the day. And I think that's what a lot of people fail to do. Don't beat yourself up. Go and apologize and, make reformation. Do what you can to make it better.
Well, I think you just coined a new phrase, which I think I'm going to run with and steal from, if you don't mind. You said FU moments. And I think there's two key parts of it. The FU that's the emotional response, as strong and as vibrant as our emotions can carry us, right? That's the FU part of it. But the moment part it should frame in our minds of it's meant to be momentary. It's not an FU hour. It's not an FU day. It's not an FU week. And we're going to have those FU moments and they're going to happen, and finding a way to move through them. So, and I don't know about the two of you, but as you think about the times we're in, I mean, these FU moments or these feelings of I'm not okay. Let's be real here. The journey that most of us have taken the last year or so, and the journey that many of us are still on, I don't think the majority of us are at our pre-COVID state of mind.
Oh, nowhere near. Nowhere near. For me, I'm on my computer an awful lot. It becomes too much at some point in time for all of us. I start feeling the emotions build of where it's enough is enough. And I literally go up and hit sleep on my computer, get up and do marches. And I know it sounds ridiculous. I get up and I do little, couple steps and couple marches and go, okay, let's just change things. You have to shift when you get to that point. You have to be able to shift and shut it down. If you do those two things, you can get past it faster.
I'm curious, are you getting up and doing your steps when you're in that moment, or are you doing it on regular intervals to make sure you don't get to those moments?
I'm trying to treat myself better by taking those breaks more often, but oftentimes I don't catch it until it's to the point where I need to stand up and walk it off.
Yeah. So one of the things that I actually do is when I have project or multiple projects going on, I actually schedule them at 45 minutes, right? So 45 minutes of the hour, right? To get what Jerry's talking about. Like today, I worked on a freaking project all day long, but I broke it up into 45-minute intervals. Right. So 45 minutes. And then I had 50 minutes to do something, right? It didn't have to be walk away from the computer, check my email, get something to drink, take a walk, whatever it might have possibly been. But I work myself in 45-minute intervals, particularly when I'm on a project in front of the computer, so that you get that moment of relief, for the best way to put it, right? And that relief is mentally and physically, as Jerry was saying.
I call that the short burst strategy. You give yourself a window of time, you're going to go at it hard for 45 minutes. And then you're going to step back.
Yep.
Right.
And then you're mentally drained and it's hard to continue on, right?
And it's good in our industry too, because it is a social industry. It's good sometimes to just speak to someone else, like to walk out of your office for a minute and just speak to someone. I also put that's where I put a time limit on it. I allow myself to interact with other members of the team. That social atmosphere is important.
Here's something for all those leaders out there who are sitting in the world of Zoom, doing back-to-back Zoom meetings, and you're sitting there looking at the Brady Bunch and looking at yourself on the monitor. I heard something recently that said, it's not healthy for us as humans to spend hours looking at our reflection, because we tend to be so critical of ourselves. It's taxing on us mentally to see our reflection of ourselves for 8 hours a day. We're not wired for that, which kind of hit me like, well, that sounds strange, but you're right. We get overly critical, right? So, and the recommendation was turn your camera off so that you can't see yourself. And that you will feel better if you turn your camera off. You also feel better if during the meeting you stand up and walk around. And moving, and we've talked a lot about stopping, taking a break, moving, motion, and expending some energy and some activity is a good way to take us away and de-stress us. I'm just curious what your perspectives are on exercise.
Arthur, one of the things I invested in when I started to work from home years ago before the pandemic was a standing desk.
Ooh.
And I only stand because the truth is this is how I feel most comfortable working. It also gives me a better way to pay attention. Right. So it actually keeps me engaged more in the conversations that are happening.
So on that note, I think you have to know yourself. We're all different. And I think if we just get to know ourselves and without judgment and then accept others without judgment and what they need to do as well. I think that's key.
This is good stuff. What are some other good, healthy ways to cope with these times?
So my brother works in the industry too, right? So he's about 6 years younger than me. He started his career maybe 8 or 10 years past me. But we often talk about what's bothering us at work, right? Because everybody has things that bother them at work. And I will tell you, this is easily 15 years ago. He said to me, you got to go with the Serenity Prayer, Colin. Like, what do you mean the Serenity Prayer? He goes, I'd never heard it before. I had no idea what it was about, right? But I pulled it up. And actually, in my old office, I had it hanging on the wall. I don't know where it is right now in my new office, but I had it hanging on the wall. It is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? And the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, right? Another lesson that I was not very good at as a young leader, but it's so important. There's things you just cannot attack, right? It's the old, I can't fight City Hall, right? So those are not the things that you should be worrying about. And it's so hard, right? And it's particularly when I was younger, but it's so hard to get out from underneath. Oh my God, I can't believe that's happening. But I have no power to change it. So I have to let go of it, right? And worry about me, right? Which is what Jerry just said, right? Know yourself, worry about what's important to me. And when you get there and you can understand it, and I'm not going to tell you that I'm 100% perfect all the time. That's not where I'm coming from. But to have this concept that you should let go of the things you can't control, because there's a lot of other things that will make you happier along the way.
That's huge.
You find yourself actually meditating on that?
I don't formally meditate, but there are things that I do, like consistently when I don't work out in the morning, I have a worse day than when I do work out in the morning. Right. So whether you want to call it meditating or right, it's clearing my mind. When I'm working out, the only thing I'm really worried about, because God, I get pushed, is what's going on in front of me. Right. Because I do it with one of those little screens and the little person who leads you and, all those good things. Right. But so that's what I'm focused on. So I don't formally meditate, but I do believe in the concept of clearing your mind of the things that are going to distract you.
I believe in that too. And on your point, Arthur, on your question regarding exercise. So I'm the worst at that. And 2021 is big for me for increasing my exercise. But I will tell you this, that in my experience, when I had teams that I led who got involved with lunchtime walking groups, I found that almost immediately after they came back from the walking group, 3 things I noticed. 1, they were happier. 2, they were more efficient. And 3, they were more engaging. And so those are things we all want. Their minds were clear. So they were able to engage in activity. So I started planning, important meetings for as soon as everyone got back from lunch when I knew they were doing their walking, because I knew I was going to get a lot done.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jerry, to your point, I would say one of the most powerful things that we should all be doing is counting our steps. Set a step goal. We talk about exercise and activity, and all too often we think you got to hit the gym, pump some iron, get on some, expensive machine. But really, just movement and steps, and counting our steps is something that everyone can do. And start with a couple thousand and build your way up. I personally took that journey. In the middle of COVID, I started walking. My goal was 8,000. Now I'm doing about 15,000 steps a day. And I start every morning. I'm up, and I've been up every winter morning this year in upstate New York.
Wow.
The coldest I walked was 4 degrees. And I put in an hour of walking in the morning.
Wow.
Start when it's dark and try not to get hit by any cars where they're reflecting stuff. But walking, and then the other piece, I do believe there's power in stopping, meditating, and picking. It could be scripture, it could be a quote, it could be something that motivates you, that inspires you, and just letting your mind spend some time there. Both those things, moving and meditation, have been around for centuries.
Can I add one?
Yes.
I'd like to add one. Music.
Yes.
Taking a break for the type of music that motivates you. When I was at Gaylord Opryland Hotel is when I learned this, is that I had to focus. There was so much always going on around me. I had to focus and push all that stuff out. So I put on Andre Bocelli, of all people. Never listened to that music in my life prior to that or since then. And Sarah Brightman, right? I mean, classical music. And I don't know why, but that music gave me the ability to super focus. So when I really needed it and I had a deadline, I put that music on. And so finding what that is. And also, if you want to take a 5-minute break, put some headphones in, sit back, lean back in your chair, listen to your favorite kind of music. You can come out of just about any funk if you put the right thing on, I think.
I wholeheartedly agree, right? I used to put myself in a better mood playlist, right?
Yeah.
Just so that when I was cranky, I had a better mood playlist. And I actually work all day with music. I am a huge jazz fan. I listen to real jazz on Sirius XM. All day, it goes on in the background. Sometimes people hear it on my calls. Sometimes they don't. Depends on how loud it's going. But I love listening to music. But Arthur, I had a question about your walking.
Yeah.
When you're walking, do you walk listening to something or do you walk with your own thoughts? And just curious because there's benefits to both sides.
I actually walk with my own thoughts.
Nice.
Cool.
In my mind, it's pretty cool because I find like really good stuff comes to me when I'm walking. And often my mind downloads, you need to do this. I'm like, okay, cool. So I make a note. Or inspirations come to me, thoughts for the podcast come to me, quotes come to me, or I mean, it's a chance for my mind just to calm down and be still. And it's amazing what bubbles up from within us if we stop and take the time to just let our mind be still. And for me, it's being outside and being in nature. That's where my mind tends to settle down and get creative. That's where my creative self bubbles up.
So you're saying just be still and be quiet, right?
You just move, and I don't have any agenda other than I'm going to walk a certain path, and whatever bubbles up during that path in my mind, I'm open to it. And good stuff I write down, the crazy stuff, I think about it, spend a little bit of time in it, and then I move on.
I was going to say, that's what I love about what you just said. First of all, if I didn't respect you before, I really respect you now walking in 4-degree weather, for an hour outside. But what I like that you said is if something pops into your mind, see, I tend to get carried away with thoughts sometimes, and I'll just stay focused on that one thought. But it's lovely that you just jot it down for later. And so you don't let it consume you for the entire walk, freeing your mind to do so much more than just that one thing.
Yeah.
That is the definition of meditation, right? Let it come in, let it go out. Let it come in, let it go out, right? So that's awesome. That's really admirable. I don't know that I like you as much as Jerry does, but that is admirable.
Well, Colin, I think a lot about you, Colin, about how you antagonize me on our podcast,
And you still love me.
But I let it go. Yeah.
And we're still friends, and you still love me.
All right. So speaking of this, speaking of, as much as I love Colin, he antagonizes me, but I want to get serious for a second. What happens, though, when we know there's something we're dealing with that is really heavy and we're not coping with it well? This concept, it's okay to not be okay. What happens when you're not okay to the point where you're not dealing with it? And I'm suggesting that there are people out there right now who are listening who are not dealing with it. Any advice for them?
You have to ask for help.
I'm one of those people right now, struggling big time with some things, very important things, life-changing things, and had 2 deaths in my family in the last several weeks. And it's hard. And so it's hard to stay focused on anything when you're experiencing pain. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Thank you.
So what I have done is I hear myself tell myself, Jerry, put your big pants on, put your big pants on. I hear myself say that, you know what, put your big pants on. You're not the only one. It's not just you. And that helps to some degree, but it also hinders me in the ability to work through it. And so I have had to call a counselor and reach out for somebody that I can, say the things out loud to that I can't say to my other family members who are also hurting.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's what I was saying, Jerry, and good for you. Congratulations. I mean,
Yes.
Not that you're going through something bad, but that you reached out for help, right? You have to ask for help. We are a social people, right? And I don't think we're wired to handle everything on our own. And the more that you bottle it up and the more that it stays inside, the worse we're all going to be, right? Yourself mentally, physically. It can affect you in so many different ways, right? But everybody you come in contact with as well.
Right.
So who's the person you talk to, right? In some cases, it's your partner. In some cases, it can't be your partner, right?
Right.
It's whoever it can be. You have to ask for help. And as much as Arthur and I are antagonizing each other, he falls into that category for me, that if I really wasn't sure what to do, Arthur, you could be one of the people that I would call with no judgment, right? Help me here. What do I need to do? And we should be that way, right? I guess that's why I'm saying it, right? When somebody comes to us with help, make sure that we open the door and be judgment free, because you're going to be the best friend / leader / coworker that you possibly could be if you're able to keep the judgment out of it.
Right. One other thing that you can do when you're going through pain is reach out to others who are going through pain, not to share what you're doing, but to be compassionate about what they're going through, right? They say when you're depressed, reach out a hand to help someone else. When you're depressed, remember that you can almost sometimes work your way out. You got to deal with the root issue, guys. You got to deal with the root cause. You can't let it go. It just gets worse. But you can help somebody else. So having said that, one of the things I've done is I'm starting a GoFundMe page for a family who has lost someone and didn't have insurance. Yeah,
recently there was certainly in the news, it bubbled up that Meghan Markle's and Prince Harry, what they've gone through and what specifically she's gone through and the struggles that she had with the royal family and the thoughts of suicide that she had. And she wanted to get help, and they told her that would make us look bad. And she was strong enough to ignore that advice and went and got that help and spoke to experts about it that could help her walk through that. And, and there's someone very visible in the press, but she recognized she had a moment of need and went and got help. And I think it speaks to that can happen to any of us. All right. And that is the path forward, is to go get help. What you keep in the dark has a level of power over you that it's hard to break when you allow it to stay in the dark. And I think that would be the message I'd want to share with our listeners, that don't let it stay in the dark. Share it, speak about it to others, share it, find some professionals and move forward with it, and understand, this podcast is titled, It's Okay to Not Be Okay. That's an example when, you embrace that and you share that information. And those who can help you will respect that and support you on that journey. So find someone, there's resources out there, and don't let it stay in the dark. Don't let it have that power over you. Take that step forward. So
that's what I was just going to add to it, Arthur. I'm sorry, but that's what I was just going to add to it, is that there are resources, right? So besides your immediate group of friends or a immediate group of family, and if that's not going to work for you, that's totally okay. Some companies have, I don't even remember what they call it anymore, but they have counseling programs, right? That is covered under your benefits, and you can find them, right? Right now in the middle of COVID, a lot of the cities, right, and the counties have people to talk to. You're never alone out there. There is always somebody out there that can work. You can do it online now. There's some sort of virtual conversation that you can have as well with licensed people, not just freaking weirdos, right? But licensed people that are out there to help. So I just wanted to add that there is somebody for everybody, and there's lots of resources to try and find that person to talk to.
And if you find yourself thinking of suicide, even if the first thought of it, don't let there be a second thought without reaching out.
Thank you, Jerry. I think that's a great thought. And we want to end on that note. We're going to end on the note of, reach out. Certainly prior to getting to that point, take the journey, embrace some of the things that we suggest there. We talked about the power of movement. We talked about the power of music, talk about the power of meditation, but certainly sharing what you're going through with somebody and finding a professional when it's appropriate is also powerful. And it's something that we should all embrace if the time to do so arises. So I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Colin, thank Jerry for joining us on today's podcast, talking this topic of It's Okay to Not Be Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love taking these journeys with you.
Cheers.
We hope all of our listeners today walked away with a golden nugget that they can share with others. Please do so. Please don't hesitate to go to arthurkeith.com, go to the Ask Arthur page, leave us comments. Once again, well, thank you. Have a great day. Hope to connect with you again soon.
Ciao, everyone.
Good night.
If you're in crisis, there are options available to help you cope. For confidential support available 24/7 for everyone in the United States, call 1-800-273-8255. Look for us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Find the links on arthurkeith.com. What do you stand for?